Uncle Doug.
Well, hello.
When was the last time you hit Vegas?
Oh my God, is Vegas still there?
Well, my understanding is that yes, it is, and they've been pretending like nothing has ever happened.
Yeah, it's gonna be a while before I feel comfortable in a buffet in Vegas ever again.
Yeah.
Did you ever feel comfortable in a buffet in Vegas?
No, but you know.
I mean, I wasn't going to the buffet thing. I was thinking more about the gambling,
the tables.
You can go out there and you can hit the games of chance.
You can become a slot jockey.
You know, it's funny for all of the vices that I have sampled in this life, gambling has never been of interest.
I'll bet you're wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I'll bet I can make you like it.
Well, gents, as much as I tried to avoid it this week, I was unable not to see clips and postings online about the most recent of 17 of Jesus' best friends on earth, prophet seer, CEO, and revelator of Ensign Peak Investments, LLC, Mormon prophet Russell M. Nelson's Mormon General Conference talk on Easter Sunday, in front of what can only be described as a desperate cry for help in the form of scenic design.
Oh my God, it was so bad.
So bad.
Yeah,
It
like
was
a regional
amazing.
production of Our Town had to be pushed off the stage.
It was a high school production. It was unbelievable.
The second I saw it, I thought of you. I had to send you an image of it just because I was
so,
like, what the fuck is happening?
Unbelievable. Now,
They have $100 billion and they spent $11.50 on a stage.
if that. Now, I'd happily talk about the ugly set they paid someone to design and build for a show televised to millions of people with eyes all day long. But it's actually the ugliness of Nelson's words that I'd like to use as an intro into my segment today. We're going to get to the gambling. And I quote, "Your mountains may be loneliness, doubt, illness, or other personal problems." Now I'm speaking at 20 times the speed he was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your mountains will vary, and yet the answer to each of your problems is to increase your faith. Lazy learners and lax disciples will always struggle to muster even a particle of faith. To do anything well requires effort. Becoming a true disciple of Jesus Christ is no exception. Increasing your faith and trust in him takes effort. And then I'm just going to skip ahead a little bit because there's so much horrible poison in here. He picks up, second, choose to believe in Jesus Christ. If you have doubts about God the Father and his beloved Son, or the validity of the restoration, or the veracity of Joseph Smith's divine calling as a prophet,
Then you're correct.
Choose to believe and stay faithful. Take your questions to the Lord and to other faithful sources. Study with a desire to believe rather than the hope you can find a flaw in the fabric of a prophet's life or a discrepancy in the scriptures. Stop increasing your doubts by rehearsing them with other doubters. Allow the Lord to lead you on your journey of spiritual discovery. There is so much poison in those paragraphs. It's hard to know where even to start. The central
a flaw in the fabric
of a prophet's life.
That's one way to yada 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 away, statutory rape. Hey, Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz, are you listening? Call it a flaw in your fabric.
Yeah, exactly.
The central premise being Mormonism cannot fail. Only doubting, useless individual Mormons can fail. You doubting, disgraceful pieces of shit.
Yep.
Secondly, being an active Mormon is many things, but lazy is not among them. Mormonism is literally a second full-time job for true believers. Just the official scriptural canon is over 2,700 pages, thousands more if you include the Journal of Discourses, which you may or may not. And you're supposed to kind of know all of it. Sundays are a total loss, and callings and service projects, etc., inhale all the hours you aren't at work or sleeping. So go fuck yourself with the lazy learner's canard, Rusty. But what the superannuated CEO of the Zion Security Corporation at City Creek Mall, LLC, was doing there with his faith it until thou maketh it bullshit was just another lazy deployment of a very lazy old chestnut of last resort deployed by Christian apologists, that being Pascal's wager.
Yeah.
And no, Uncle Dan, I said Pascal's wager, not Pascal's pager. which is what his bookie at the off-track betting place uses to send him messages that his horse lost yet again. I said Pascal's wager, which is probably the weakest theological apologetic there is. So a little about its origin. Pascal's wager is a weird little thought experiment written by Blaise Pascal, a very smart, gifted French mathematician, born in 1623 and published after his death in 1662. It's kind of an imagined conversation between a believer, probably Pascal himself, and some unnamed atheist or at least agnostic. My silly bit about Pascal's off-track bookie is actually relevant because, as an avid gambler that he was, this thing really is a wager and a bet. Have you guys ever read the original kind of text of Pascal's wager?
No, I don't speak
did.
French.
It was in a book I read.
Yeah.
But it's been a long time, and I remember it's very. I don't remember it.
He dresses it up and he tries to overly, in my opinion, he tries to overly complicate it,
right,
when it's kind of not.
Well,
it's actually a very simple concept.
When you write something that stupid,
Yeah.
flowery language helps to sort of mask the odor of
Yeah,
it.
word count helps if you have a stupid idea. So just ask Joseph Smith. So the believer lays out a proposition to the agnostic in the wager, saying essentially, if one were to believe in God and conduct one's life accordingly, and then die only to find out the God of the wager isn't real, then one has lost very little. But if one were to choose not to believe in God, then pass through the veil only to find God does indeed exist, one risks losing greatly, and not just by being denied entry through the pearly gates, but by being dispatched to the fiery lakes of hell for eternity.
Right.
But if one wagers that God does indeed exist and then snuffs it to find out that Pascal's God does exist, you are rewarded beyond all imaginings with eternal glory in the presence of God. So in brief, if you live your life as if God exists and he doesn't, you haven't lost much. Live your life as if he doesn't and it turns out he does, you, my dear, are very fucked. Live your life as if he does and he indeed does, well, it's harps and clouds forever and ever for you, dear gambler. So, we didn't get really deep into philosophy before I dropped out of art school. So I am perhaps not the philosophy ninja I would prefer to be to take this one on, but in reality, I don't think I have to be any sort of philosophy ninja to do Pascal's wager justice. And I, read quite a bit on it, and there are some very long discussions about the deeper philosophical issues with Pascal's wager, but let me just stick to the rivers and the lakes that I'm used to, those being bad ideas applied badly. So firstly, Pascal's wager is not actually what a lot of Christian apologists who still use it, not what they think it is, which is a proof of the existence of their God. In fact, it totally concedes the whole point of trying to. It starts thusly. If there is a God, he is infinitely incomprehensible, since having neither parts nor limits, he has no affinity to us. We are then incapable of knowing either what he is or if he is. He continues a bit later, God is or he is not. But to which side shall we incline? Reason can decide nothing here. There is an infinite chaos which separated us. A game is being played at the extremity of this infinite distance where heads or tails will turn up. What will you wager? According to reason, you can do neither the one thing nor the other. According to reason, you can defend neither of the propositions. Pascal himself, an extremely devout believer, concedes that it is just not possible to know whether or not God exists at all. And I counter with the proposition that he is wrong. It would be entirely possible to know if God exists if the all-powerful creator of the universe would simply reveal himself,
right,
as Pascal's own beloved Bible claims God did on many occasions, hugging the BC AD international dateline in and around Judea. And of course, when one is placing this bet, what God can and should they expect to meet when they arrive over the rainbow? Pascal simply asserts that it's an absurd proposition to claim he would be anything other than the God Yahweh, the God of the Testaments Old and New. Obviously, religious and cultural chauvinism were very much the prime directive of the Catholicism of the 17th century. But for a man hailed as such a deep thinker, declaring the God just happens to be the one he believes in out of the thousands of options is a pretty arrogant wager made prior to making his more famous one.
Right. Because at the end of the day, you have to bet 100% correct.
Yeah.
Right? Like, even if you bet on God, but the wrong God, you're in the same boat as the atheist.
This is a pass-fail. There's nothing in the middle. It's all or nothing, this proposition, right? It's a literal coin toss.
Well, I mean, you know who made that argument the best of anybody was one Mr. Homer Simpson.
What did he say?
Who at one point said, but what if I'm wrong about which God? Then I'll just be making him madder and madder.
Oh, that's right.
something along those lines.
And what of the other sort of arrogant, dismissive portion of the cosmic bet? That being, all you have to do is decide to believe. More on that in a bit. And live your entire life according to the particularly staunch tendril of Catholicism that Pascal did, that being called Jansenism, which is an odd little kind of French offshoot. From cradle to grave, attending Mass multiple times a week, putting all you could into the collection plate, eating fish on Fridays, genuflecting before a gruesome image of some poor Jewish guy dying miserably via Roman capital punishment, etc., etc. And if it was all for naught, what did you really lose? Well, a lot.
Right.
To live life in the Catholic France of the 17th century and live by the dictates of the Roman Church was an exercise in servility and fear. Catholic life is still an exercise in servility and fear.
Yeah.
Terror of hell, slavish obedience to a palace full of debauched, corrupt, hysterical virgins, dropping one's meager earnings into a plate every week to fund a global empire run from a Baroque castle literally made out of golden statues. Living such a hobbled existence is losing more than a little in the quality of life wager for me, Blaze.
Right.
And again, Pascal, hailed as such a brilliant mind, could see only his own experience reflected in the mirror of his wager. What of the plight of the poor, of women, of minority groups in this wager? The life of women in most religious communities at the time was, and still is, markedly worse than men. So sure, here, lady, be a slave to both Rome and the men in your life, because what do you really have to lose? This bet could pay off for you.
Yeah. You might hit a jackpot at the end, but also look at how shitty this part of your life is.
And all you have to put on the table is all of your physical and intellectual freedom and curiosity forever.
Right.
But as Pascal's wager has outlived him by several hundred years, it is now a universal apologetic for believers of all stripes. As we saw, local boy Russell M. Nelson used it to tell Mormons to believe or else. Evangelicals are very beloved of Pascal's wager because their visions of hell far outweigh any possible dream of heaven, just like so many other Christian denominations. Demanding people live by the dictates of your religion, which in most cases is the one you were assigned at birth, because the already outlandish proposition of your particular flavor of the afterlife and its king could possibly be true, is a pretty fucked up sales pitch for your religion, bub. And that gets to what is really the fundamental problem with Pascal's wager for me. It's so cynical and so poorly crafted an argument because it not only doesn't even try to demonstrate the argument central to itself that God exists, but even worse, it's an argument for a deeply dishonest way of living.
Yeah.
It's not an argument to believe in God. It's an argument to act as if one believes in God.
Right.
Terrorizing people into belief, as Catholicism has a long history of doing, isn't getting them there honestly. An all stick and no carrot approach may be effective in forcing compliance, but is compliance really the same as belief? Pascal is arguing on behalf of a God who apparently doesn't give a fuck about sincerity, merely appearances, which makes his all-powerful judge of the weight of a man's heart a pretty insincere schmuck himself.
Yeah.
Real belief is a thing that's arrived at through a series of experiences and understandings. It isn't just something you choose to do all of a sudden. His appeal to the idea that evidence shouldn't enter into your thinking is appalling. Evidence is necessary for rational decision-making in every corner of life. To reject the need for it because none can be provided for your proposition is cute, but I can see your bullshit there, Blaze. And finally, an experienced gambler like Pascal should know one is a fool to place a bet if you really don't know if the guy on the other side of the table is going to take it. To be so blithely confident that the house is going to pay out on the terms the better sets strains foolishness well beyond its breaking point.
Yeah.
Again, whenever a religious apologist deploys la Paris de Pascal, they're admitting they have no compelling evidence for their extraordinary claims, but insist that you live by the dictates of the religion they were 80% likely to have been born into, so they themselves don't feel dumb for believing it. Using Pascal's wager means they've given up, but you goddamn better pretend as they do. You better pretend as they do, or else. And that is a super shitty argument for anything, if you ask me. Well, maybe not everything. You see, fellas, on our side of the reason and sanity argument, we have used a sort of Pascal's wager of our own, most notably when discussing climate change.
How dare you?
Those of us who believe man-made climate change is occurring, which are, just to cut to the chase, all the sane people on Earth, have proposed just such a wager. That being, if we immediately take action to try to slow down and maybe even one day reverse climate change, the benefit is enormous. That being, life on Earth continues to exist. If we do nothing, everything dies a slow and miserable death on a more and more hostile planet. But even if the deniers are right, and we switch to a more conscientious, less consumption-based society for no reason at all, what have we really lost?
Right.
Basically, no more rolling coal, which hardly bears mentioning as a sacrifice. But here's the difference. There is a massive body of evidence compounding daily for the reality of catastrophic climate change. Even if there was only just one evidence for it, that is one more evidence than there is for the existence of Pascal's God. So, thanks for the wager, Blaze. We'll take it from here. So that's Pascal's wager. I say don't take it.
There's a very funny cartoon. A group of scientists are gathered. They're discussing climate change, and one scientist is asking the group, "What if we make the world a better place for the wrong reasons?"
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's exactly
what if
right.
But yeah. I agree with you. Like, it's so crazy because if you accept all of the wager, it's such a long stretch. Okay, which God?
Yeah.
Which particular Christian God? Okay, which Baptist fucking God? You drill all the way down on that. You're telling me that at the end of all this, you never believed in him, you just pretended to, and you're in? Like he doesn't.
I mean, it's such a rules-based theology. This theology that you can that like God works in technicalities. It's kind of shocking that they would admit that, like, it's such a technicality-based idea.
It's so cynical, right? It doesn't. It's not really an appeal to true faith and an intellectual and spiritual searching of the heart, right?
Yeah.
That you can examine the texts and the claims and kind of have that. Apparently, he had some, and I don't know what it was. He had some very profound spiritual experience himself. He believed in that.
Was it a wager-based spiritual experience?
But there's one of my favorite, and the name of the Egyptian god is failing me right now. But the one who weighs your heart against a feather when you arrive in the afterlife, right?
Oh yeah.
And that
I think his name is Bob.
It's Bob. It's Bob of the Nile. And to me, what that symbolizes is, you absolutely, sincerely need to have been a good person. You truly, right. What weighs on your heart, your belief and everything, that counts. What Pascal's wager says is it doesn't count at all.
Right. It's not weighing the feather thing is not weighing your deeds and actions. It's weighing where you really live, like what's real about you.
Right.
Personally.
Yeah. Wouldn't you rather face your maker and say, "Look, dude, I'm not the first to say this, but look, man, you gave me this huge fucking brain, and I applied it to you, and you came up wanting. So I lived my life according to what I could prove, what I believed was moral and just." And you're going to judge me for that? Meanwhile, this guy who pretended the whole time gets to waltz right in. And like you said, Uncle Mark, what if, the faith you decide is the one true faith you're gonna pretend at is the Westboro Baptists?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you're going to live a miserable life. You're going to have to hate gay people. You're going to have to fight your coworkers and lose your family the whole time going, God, I hope I'm right about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
It's so cynical.
Also, if you want to extend the wager, why not add a daredevil element to it and just realize that Christian theology says I can just repent right at the end,
Yeah.
and it's all forgiven? So I'm going to take the wager. I'm going to live my life like a crazy person. I'm going to commit all the sins I want to, not live the way Pascal says, but actually just live like a live whatever I want to, and then as soon as I think I see it coming, do a quick repentance.
Yeah.
And since it's all technicalities anyway, I get to go where you went, and I had a fun life anyway.
I will pull a Kevin Sorbo at the end of God Is Not Dead. Right. And just laying in the road, say, what did he say? Jesus. And the guy stands up. Today's a great day. It's over a dying man. But yeah, that's exactly right. According to Pascal, I think you could pull that deathbed repentance off. So,
what is this bullshit? You're right, Uncle Dan. This technicality-based religious belief. It's basically, God and heaven are the plot of the Star Chamber. Right? You know what I mean? It's like you can get in or out based on, where'd you drop the gun? On this side of the fence or that side of the fence? I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? An all-knowing God is like, man, nothing I can do.
Is God too stupid to know if you're sincere or not?
Exactly.
Right.
Or he doesn't care.
It's a hot mess. It's a terrible.
No matter how you look at it, the God that Pascal proposes, I'm betting against it.
Yeah, me too. So let's cash in our winnings and move on.
Always bet on black.